Still on the inaugural Africa Protected Iris Congress, our colleague Athan Tashobya sat down for an interview with the CEO of Africa Wildlife Foundation, Kaddu Sebunya, to expound more on the significance of the meeting and what it means for Africa's renewed conservation efforts. He started by asking Sebunya how the three former African heads of state, Hailemariam, Desalegn, former Prime Minister for Ethiopia, Issoufou Mahamadou, former President of Niger, and His Excellency Festus Mogae, former President for Botswana, were selected as patrons for the upcoming inaugural IUCN Africa Protected Iris Congress. The Court of Appeal. Yes, so let's take a look.
These are three individuals that have walked the talk. I just happen to be a friend and I've worked with them on a number of issues. Africa, I've visited them in their countries post their presidency. We've looked at what they've done as president, as decisions made, and how they moved the needle in terms of this area, the influence they have on the continent, the networks they've built over time, and what they've achieved. But I think the most important thing is the passion. These three individuals, you've seen them here, and some of those who are not here. The passion, President Hailemariam, we talked about his passion for environment, what he has done, what he brings on the table. Explains that. I've been to some of their villages and the work they are carrying out today, post-presidents. Prime Minister Hailemariam is in Ethiopia doing great work on supporting communities, improve their livelihoods based on natural resources, whether it's agriculture, whether it's the tourism industry, whether it's managing wildlife on their land and how they benefit. That is his passion. And the connection to environment. Actually, he chairs the Board of Tourism Board, from presidency to the chair of the Tourism Board of Ethiopia. It's a demonstrated passion. I've been to Niger, talking with President Yusuf. He invited me to his village. He has done great work. His village is part of the desert, coming desert. Desertification has impacted his village. He was telling me, growing up as a young man, he would see giraffes and buffaloes in his village. Now you can't even see a tree in his village, other than the trees he has just planted. He's planted over millions of trees with community efforts in his village. And my last visit, I remember vividly, I was talking to an elderly lady in his village who told me it's for the first time the last 2 years that his village had a water basin. Botswana, President Mogae, you know what Botswana is. It's one of the leading countries, conservation countries in Africa, having almost more than 200,000 elephants. The biggest herd of elephants is found in this country. They've done conservation very well. The tourism industry is very, very healthy. In fact, the tourism industry in Botswana supports it's the biggest employer of rural communities, especially women. So there are examples and models these leaders have taken on, and they've shown what needs to be done and what needs to be involved. But for me, the biggest appreciation for them is the passion and the time and the voluntary. They're volunteers to us.
So let's talk about between now and March, when the Congress is happening, what will be their job, and probably after that?
Mobilization. There is a reason why we chose these three. Apart from what I've just explained, you note that they are all former leaders. What we need for conservation sector here to change the narrative is political will. In the next 10 years, we really need a huge mobilization of African leaders around the conservation sector. We need to improve the relationship, our leaders, especially the decisions they're making on our economic growth, national development plans, to start factoring in natural resources. This conference needs that political will in order to mobilize the continent in the short term. In the long term, we need to mobilize ourselves, especially the young people, in implementation of one of the recommendations we'll get from this. Without young people, we are dead in the water. 70% of us of the continent is young.
Now, this Congress is happening for the very first time in Africa, for the very first time in Rwanda. After so many years, one would want to ask, well, have been our priorities, the priorities of leaders over these past years, that especially in conservation conversation?
It's really sad. Every time I say this is the first time Africa is going to talk about protected areas, I shiver, because why did it take us so long? I think it's lack of understanding the role of protected areas in our existence on this continent. And I think the biggest challenge has been from the conservation fraternity itself. Conservation, how it was introduced, protected areas, how they were formed. Many times we kicked Africans off land to form these protected areas. The way, the relationship between Africans and protected areas is not, it's very economical, it's not as great. Even the industry that supports almost 70% of these protected areas, that's tourism. The way it's designed for international arrivals, not so much for Africans. And the industry itself, most of it is run by very few Africans involved. So we don't have anything from the conservation sector that we can talk about that really connects Africans to the industry itself. Even the voices, you hear non-Africans telling Africans why elephants are important. There are very few African voices, even in the sector. So the issue is not so much about decisions Africans have made, but how conservation also sector has behaved on this continent. That needs to change. But also, Africans, we've completely outsourced. So the problem is not for those who are helping us actually to conserve. The problem is that we have accepted that, and we have outsourced almost the entire sector to the international community. So this conference is about to address, why did this happen? What do we need to do? What works? But also, what is the reason for protected areas? Why are they useful? What's their contribution? We have about 8,000 plus. Do we need all of them? Which ones are very, very important for our survival? Which ones can we actually get rid of?
Mr. Kaddu Sebunya, the CEO of Africa Wildlife Foundation, many thanks for your time.